click?
It's clicked. Hey guys, happy Monday. It is, gosh, mid-October already. I'm sitting here in Seattle getting ready to get back to Michigan. Can't wait. And joining today on our live talk, which is we're going to show you and talk to you about how loan officers should be thinking about, large language models, LLM, and then specifically the GEO aspect of that. And we all know what and how to manage SEO. This is going to be a conversation on how to make sure you're showing up when consumers are asking questions in different spots, like ChatGPT as an example. So I'm going to be listening and learning right along with all y'all. And joining my live today is Chris Hazen and Diana Mulhall from FinLocker and Katie Shive. Katie is a marketing expert who's really gone deep and sometimes like 1 a.m. deep in rabbit holes on all things AI. And y'all might recognize Katie from her great work with First Home IQ. She's one of the key contributors and leaders of the First Home IQ mission. We're super proud to partner with First Home IQ here at FinLocker. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Chris to kind of drive the conversation, and I'm going to get my notepad ready. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks all. I'm excited for this. This is some of those things that we just continually learn every day. It's the new hot topic. So I think even talking to Katie a lot, I've learned a lot from her, learned a lot from Diana, learned a lot on my own. But I just wanted to kind of start off by, I'm going to ask Katie, you first, and then Diana, see if you can add in as well. But let's just start with the basic question. What is GEO and what is LLM, Katie?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, you guys. So GEO, I mean, we've probably heard it, but it just stands for Generative Engine Optimization. So it's a fancy way for, like Brian said, how training your AI, your large language models to find you. So if I were to search, go to ChatGPT and search who is Chris Hazen, what would come up? What would I find? Does it have, is it trained to pull and cite, source, and reference your stuff? So it's like a step sister to SEO, but it's the AI version. It's a very simple way of putting it.
I like SEO, GEO now, simply because it gives you more options, whereas SEO before was very much focused on your website and writing content to get found online. Now there's a lot more options. And I think that's where it puts the control back into the hands of like the everyday person, like loan officers. Whereas before you had to rely on your marketing department to do more sort of back-end coding as well, and write your meta descriptions and very much be aware of, alt tags and things like that for images. Whereas now you can do a lot more content yourself to get found, which I think is a great opportunity.
Well, I love that you say that, because I mean, it's right in that it really gives the little person the chance, right? So when you think about SEO, you used to have to spend lots of money and time, and it really is a skill, like you said, with your meta tags and your H1-2 titles and all of those things to make sure that you're ranking, on that first page of Google. And in the past, it could have been more like just who threw the most money at your website for optimization, where you would get ranked, but it didn't necessarily mean that you had, you were the best expert. It just meant that you won to the top. So the goal with GEO is we still very much want to be cited and sourced, but you don't have to have a huge budget for it. You really just have to think, with AI, it's pairing answers and questions. So, I love to use this example. The other day, my lawnmower broke. Well, this was a couple of weeks ago, but my lawnmower broke, and I was out there like trying to figure out how to fix it. And my husband comes out and he's talking, like I hear this female voice on his phone. I'm like, did you call a support line? He activated his voice on AI, and within 30 seconds, he figures out what's wrong with our lawnmower. He didn't go to Google and search for links to try to read a blog and troubleshoot it. Like instantly he got information. And that's the same search pattern that we're seeing today. So GEO is really allowing people to have visibility quickly.
And Katie, using that as an example, because I think for people to even help understand that maybe some of them are not using ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or whatever the AI engines are, there's a level of that right just in a Google search now. When
Yeah.
if everyone pulls up their Chrome browser and types something in Google, what's the first thing that's at the top? It's
the AI summary.
AI summary. So for those people listening, think about it in that context. That's giving you a summary. It's citing sources, but it's trying to give you all of your best answers first, as opposed to here are the best web pages that match. Now I'm only click into the web page and search. It's trying to do save you time and do some of that hard lifting up front.
Well, and I think it eliminates the overwhelm too, because as you know, when we think about search behavior, most of the time when we're going to search for something, we have a question that we're searching an answer for. So what I love about how AI is changing that behavior is that it's pairing the questions that consumers naturally have. So if we put it back to the context of, a home buyer, they're not going in usually and doing deep search on DTI or some of these things, but they might be asking a higher level question of, can I qualify for a loan if I have debt? Right. And so AI is taking a simplified version and pairing the answers even within Google. So it's just making that, accessibility a lot easier.
So using that example of like, hey, can I qualify for something with this higher DTI? Now translating that back into how this GEO works, like how would you give that as an example of, let's just say, I live here in New Orleans. I said, what can I get approved with DTI in New Orleans with, a 48% DTI?
Yep. Like, so how would you optimize your chance for being referenced as a loan officer in your local market?
Yeah.
It's a great question. I mean, there's some simple things that go into it. For one, AI likes to reference, sources or cite it. So if you're creating content and you're just writing, your own thoughts, that's one aspect of kind of the grade. But then if you're going in and pulling an article, going back to First Home IQ as an example, or maybe you're referencing FinLocker, or maybe you're referencing something from MBS Highway. So if you're writing a LinkedIn post or wherever you're creating content, if you can even leave a breadcrumb that's like, oh, according to the recent study by here, and you cite that, the AI now grades that as like, oh, they're bringing in more relevant detail, not just, their own thought pieces. A couple other things, anytime that you can reference your geographical area. So Chris, in New Orleans, anytime you're writing content, if you can weave some of those data points. So instead of just saying, I hate this example, but the cliche 3 reasons why you should buy a home, don't end there. 3 reasons why you should buy a home in New Orleans. Or maybe you write a specific of, do you have outlying neighborhoods around the New Orleans metro area? So now you're giving the LLMs breadcrumbs to know, oh, Chris always writes content and he's located or targeting back to this geographical area. So it starts to associate your name with geographical area. And then the other thing I would recommend, especially as a realtor or a loan officer, spend some time and figure out what are some of the key specialties that you do. Do you focus a lot with down payment assistance, or maybe you serve veterans, or you are a First Home IQ ambassador and you partner with them? Find some of those key words and then make sure that you're consistently including that into your content. So over time, that compound effect, AI will know, oh, every time I see Chris Hazen, FinLocker comes up, First Home IQ comes up, down payment assistance. So it can start assigning things to you.
And
Diana, maybe... another thing to do also when you're creating, say, a blog content is how AI does like doing summaries, say, on Google. It also likes you to write a summary, just, a paragraph summarizing your blog post at the top. And it loves bullet points as well. So if you're going to sort of write some, tips, just do tips 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5. Highlight that so people can glance it and get the information. That's what it's all about as well.
So if you see like at the top of summaries, especially for blog or articles, it's the TLDR, which I had to Google a while ago because I was like, what is this? It stands for too long didn't read, but it's like the Cliff Notes version, right? So AI loves it, but who doesn't love a quick summary of a summary, right? So it's like, you know, if you're looking at a blog article that's 1,000 to 1,500 words, you can just go to that top and be like, okay, in 3 sentences, I have a gist of what this is going to be talking about. So it kind of primes you. But again, it also trains that LLM to scan it quickly to be like, oh, I can index this because this article is about that.
Yeah, I see you do that. I mean, every one of your blog posts, because I follow
I
you.
started doing it and I'm like, this, yeah.
Yeah. So, and actually, if people want, so one of the points here is we're going to give some examples and also how there's third-party tools where you can see how you show up, because some of this sounds arbitrary. Okay, I'm just going to start going and doing blog posts. But I put in the comments here for Katie's website. She does a very good job. You can see how the format is written on there. But then if you want to do stuff like see where you just currently rank, this is a long link, but this is a link to HubSpot actually has a free tool that you can use to go see how that you show up on there. And I wanted to just show something real quick because we are still, we're a tech company and we're still figuring this out, getting better. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's make sure. Sorry, I just want BB or Katie. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen?
No, it is.
Yeah. So this is one we're doing, and we want to be higher on here. Diane has done a lot of work in BB and myself a lot along brand sentiment. So you can see our brand sentiment is high. But Diana, do you want to speak to some of your daily efforts, because we're trying to get more exposed to the whole lending world, lenders and loan officers. And so Diana, I know you've done a lot of effort in this area, but I think the same concepts apply for our lender clients who are watching, or lenders in general watching to get in front of consumers.
Yes, as Katie was saying, it's, starting to do your blogs. I'm also starting to not only do our content moving forward, but also I've been working through our web pages that were already pre-existing. And so this report that anyone can run on their website through HubSpot, unfortunately, it does not take into account everything I've done in this year in 2025. It kind of, Perplexity was a little bit included, but I think it was Claude and ChatGPT kind of cut off their training model for 2024 midway through. So, but you can just see even, how things have been viewed up until then. But yeah, I've been putting our existing content in. So each page into ChatGPT and asking it to revise for GEO LLM and provide optimized titles, URLs, meta tags, and then it's been coming back with that content. And I mean, because I've already, if you were to write, say, a blog post, you should also be adding the audience as well. And you could take a blog post that's existing and ask it to improve with the geographical information too.
Yeah, and I think so, Chris, when you were referencing that tool, that's the HubSpot one, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the HubSpot one. There's another one called Peekaboo that I know Diana uses. I don't know, Katie, if you use any other tools.
So I haven't used that, but I'm curious. I know, sometimes when we look at the some of these tools, they're really more focused on B2B. And so, it's always interesting when we're talking about, a loan officer or a realtor, you really have a couple different brands, right? You have your personal brand, and then you have the corporate brand that you work with. And so I'm excited to dig into that tool that you shared, because I think it's really valuable. One of the things that I think is important to note also when we're talking about training AI to know who you are is, not just writing the actual content and kind of building that reservoir of content, but also just doing an AI or a GEO audit of yourself. I actually did this again over the weekend, and that's where Brian was joking about my 1 a.m. reference, because I was up until 3 a.m. because I was just deep down the rabbit hole of like, okay, I got to learn this. So like, let's audit myself. I was actually pleasantly surprised to show up finally, because I've really been working on this strategy. But then I went down this rabbit hole with looking at what is your core entity. So if I were to ask you, Brian, if I were to ask AI, who is Brian View and what is he known for? Right? You want to not just hope that you come up with the right answer, but you want to actually train it, which is the cool part about all the content that we're doing is we actually get to train it. It's not just an algorithm that by happenstance or luck. And so I'm going to put my chat. I can't connect to chat for some reason, so I'm going to put this in the private chat, you guys. And if one of you can share this with the group, that would be awesome. But that's a long kind of prompt. But what you could do is you could go into your preferred AI platform, Chat, Gemini, or Claude, and put this in there. This is an exercise. So that is essentially going to help you define what is your core entity, which is just a fancy way of saying, we want what you're going to be known for. So think of it as what's your name, your role, your title, and then your audience, your expertise, and your location. So going back to the loan officer as an example, obviously it'd be, your name, loan officer, your audience would be, maybe you specialize in first-time home buyers, or if you want to niche down into an audience. But then that expertise, you can include that, and then your location. So when you get that through this prompt, when you refine kind of your statement, that's kind of like your one-line bio. Then you want to be going into all of your different main platforms, like your LinkedIn, your YouTube, if you have that, anywhere that you're have the control to create content, and you want to be making sure that you have consistency across your profiles, so that's kind of that core. Here's who you are and here's what you do, so AI can pull those pieces quickly.
So I wanted to, I'm putting up Kelly's comment on here because I think this is a very important question. But what is the best blog platform to have LLMs recognize this? And I think the answer is it's a multi-answer, right? But Katie, maybe you can start there. But I want, and Diana too, what surprised me was how much Reddit is now is coming up at the top for some of these things. And I don't think that's something that a lot of us have thought about. LinkedIn we live on for business, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, we're getting content out there to the consumers. But when you talk about a Reddit platform, they're going there for the same type of things as an AI search. They searching for a question and they're finding community contributed answers to that.
Yeah. So I'll pull the link when I kick it over to Diana. But I recently was doing a search, and they this company that did the search, they pulled 9.6 million ChatGPT queries. They scrubbed that, and then they were looking for the top 100 US cited websites. Now, Chris, to your point, Reddit was #1, which also surprised me. But then LinkedIn ranked number 74. Now, that doesn't sound very impressive, but here's what I want to call attention to. When you pull out things like People Magazine, Better Homes and Gardens, Amazon, Walmart, like we're not even on that. That's not an apples to apples type of platform. But when you isolate the data and you look at the platforms where you can create user generated content, LinkedIn would have been the second. So if you don't have an owned blog, like most people don't, if you do not have your own independent blog, then I am really a huge fan of using LinkedIn for that long form content. And I actually learned this from Brian. So this is like credit to you, is I recently started doing articles, and then I started creating a weekly newsletter. So you can go into LinkedIn. It does want you to commit to a cadence. So you could do, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever. And that's a great place to house your thought leadership. You own your platform. Nobody's going to, cut off your access from your own account. And then you can start writing content on LinkedIn. And because that's one of right now, at least, top 100 cited sources, I think it's a great free resource to be putting thought leadership on.
Yeah, what I like about the newsletter on LinkedIn is it pushes, once you build your subscriber list on the platform, when you publish, it pushes it to them as a push notification right on their app, so they'll see it right when they come in. And if when they subscribe, if they've elected to also get an email, they'll get an email with that as well. And it just drives eyeballs to your profile.
And the cool part about that is I've been working for months to grow my organic email list because I don't have, a big database. And so I've been working so hard to do that organically. And then I was like, I'm going to give this newsletter a try. Literally within like 2 hours of posting, I had a decent jump. And then by the end of that week, I had more followers on my LinkedIn newsletter than I did on my organic email list, which I had been like grueling over for 5 months. So that was the biggest surprise for me.
I was going to say another place to put your blog post is create a Google business profile. If you've got an office, having a Google business profile is absolutely essential. You can highlight your social media. It can give a place for you to share your testimonials, as well as add regular content to that. It's another place to put your blogs, and it also is recognized by GEO.
And the cool thing, just to piggyback off of that, is if you do have control over your Google My Business profile, I know a lot of companies control that, so this may not be applicable for everybody. But if you do own your Google My Business profile, you can go in and leave questions and answers on your profile. And the cool part about that is there's no limit to how many questions that you can put on there. They do have a character limit, I think at 500 words or 500 characters per response. But in your Google My Business profile, you could literally, brainstorm what are some different specialties that you have. Again, maybe it's veterans, first-time homebuyers, whatever. Then go into, Perplexity or chat, brainstorm a list of, the top 10 questions that a prospective homebuyer might be asking about that subject. And then you can ask it to format a question and an answer in, really conversational form. And then you can go prime your Google My Business profile with, keywords in your name, so that, again, that's just one more place to park information there.
Putting some of the comments. I just saw now from the private chat some of the comments that you guys.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Let me put some of those.
What Chris is going to put, that's just the source where I pulled that stat from about Reddit being number one. I had a client last week, actually, that she started appearing in Reddit. And she also got her first lead, like butt in a chair appointment lead from AI in the last month too. So if you're not in Reddit, I think Reddit can kind of be a mixed bag, right? It's like any content platform. You could go in and probably get really lost or go down a lot of rabbit holes. If you were to add Reddit into part of your prospecting or your content strategy, I would say give yourself some guardrails, like, hey, I'm going to jump in for 10, 15 minutes. But within Reddit, you can go in and search, keywords. So go search your area. Maybe it's, mortgage and Denver or whatever. And then I always like to see what kind of conversations are coming up in those threads. And then where it's applicable, if that is part of your strategy, you can jump in and start having some of those conversations, just answering questions that people might have. I don't know if it's going to directly lead to a closed deal. It certainly might. Like my client, I'm going to talk with her this week, because she was telling me about how she got that conversation from Reddit. But Reddit is right now a really trending spot to be showing up on.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I need to spend more time on as well. But those, just reading it and just being such a interactive search, I actually spent some time too with the Reddit team of just understanding how, and this goes more into paying the money, but how you can show up just like you pay on LinkedIn or Facebook to certain profiles, but you can show up very specifically within certain types of conversations, which is obviously a powerful thing.
I think people have dismissed Reddit. I don't know. I personally am like, who's on Reddit? Like, am I old? Like, am I really turning into like a dinosaur? Which I'm not. But with Reddit, I think, you can just have a lot of ranting, right? It's kind of like sometimes it can be viewed as that place where people just go and whatever. But again, if you're using keywords and you're going in and searching, I think it can be a really good place to mine some good prospecting and some conversations there.
In regards to Kelly just posted, how does Reddit know it's you posting? Like it's Reddit kind of you gain credibility on Reddit by contributing and the longevity of your account. So it may not pay off so soon, but by contributing, even if you join, say, the first time home buyer group and the homeowner group, I find those two just very eye-opening in themselves. And just, contribute as you would, just providing simple advice. When people ask questions, it will gain you that credibility for you to then, and you can start off saying, as a loan officer, here's my experience, and that kind of adds to it. But you're not like forward blatantly selling.
But going back to the blog post and stuff like that, even in a forum in Reddit, someone asks a question, you've already written a great post on that. You can drop that in there, right? Of just
yeah, you can go put your link back in there and be like, like Diana said, I think it's all the way that you frame your conversations, right? If you're just coming in and just like selling and self-promotion, I mean, people smell that a mile away. I have really been drawn to this phrase lately. I was thinking about it. I'm like, there's a lot of hype out there. There is so much hype. It's really noisy. There's a lot going on. So in a world with a lot of hype, show up with help. Right? If we just show up, if our goal for giving content and for engagement and having conversations is to help, which I know that really is the heart of a loan officer and realtors, like we really want to be helpful. If that's your framework, when you're showing up in these conversations, I love what Diana said. If you just say, hey, as a loan officer, XYZ, then, don't just be like, call me or I sent you a DM, like actually respond publicly to the question, because yes, you're going to go DM that person and maybe that starts a conversation, but you're also, other people evergreen wise might be looking at this thread later. They're going to be able to go see. And if you put a link to your LinkedIn article. I'm a huge Housing Link user, so I don't know if any of you guys know about Housing Link, but that's another great tool that you can put all of your content in and then put your link in there so that when your comment is answering that question, but then you're also giving them a resource to go back and find you in other places.
So, Brian, question for you, because we've mentioned LinkedIn quite a bit, and from a mortgage industry, you're one of the masters of LinkedIn. So if someone's on here, has 500, 1,000 followers, what advice would you give to them to start growing their following, their presence?
Yeah, the good news is it's we've already heard it a couple different times throughout this conversation. I think you have to start by showing up, right? And like any platform, LinkedIn especially, you'll see if you're a self-promoter trying to sell on LinkedIn, your content, you'll get no engagement because nobody wants to be sold on LinkedIn. It's just the reality. So add value, teach people. I think that the number one thing to do on LinkedIn that resonates and shows up in the metrics is teaching. So if you teach somebody, you'll show up on people's feeds that are looking for those same answers. And then consistency, right? LinkedIn especially rewards consistency. So, doing a newsletter, like Katie mentioned, that's a consistent action. People will look for your newsletter every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. And so build up that consistency. And then again, just add value, be teaching. And then the other thing on LinkedIn that is highly rewarded is when you engage with other people's content. So don't just be a one-way poster, but go out and actively engage with people's content in a meaningful way, not just a thumbs up, but add a layer. And what I've learned is I spend more time commenting on other people's posts, and oftentimes my comments I'll turn into a post a day or two later, because you can actually see when you comment on somebody's post, you can actually see how much engagement that comment gets. And so if you get a good engagement on a comment, turn that into your own post, your own piece of content.
Yeah, and that's really what I've learned from you, because I'm trying to grow my LinkedIn following to even more, and that commenting and engaging and really interacting with the community, and just like you would at a social gathering, right? Like it's the same type of concept, so you don't need to overthink it. It's just, you have a thought, put it down. I got in my head so much of rewind a year ago of like, oh, is this really meaningful, or should I do this? But it's just that interaction and comment, and you're just being a human at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm loving LinkedIn. I honestly, even just 6 months ago, I just had this impression that it was like, oh, this is just, it's the business social media accounts. And I'm actually finding the opposite. It's my new favorite social media platform, and I'm not as active on my other ones. But to your point, Brian, it's the quality of conversations that I'm having on LinkedIn have bar none been amazing. And, like you said, you're not just going in and, giving the heart or the thumbs up, but part of my strategy is like, yes, I will go post, to kind of get some of those ticks of, putting content out there for GEO as a strategy. I do try to make sure that every post or every thought piece that I'm putting actually is helpful and has value. The last thing I want to do is just create noise for kicks and giggles. But then second to that, after I post, I'm going in, just like you said, Brian, and literally like spending 10, 20, 30 minutes a day. Okay, how can I engage? Even if I don't know that person, if there's something that resonated. And I've been amazed at how many comments have then turned into private DMs. I've had my calendar booked literally from just having conversations with people. I'm like, you're rad. Do you want to hop on a Zoom and have a conversation? And then you meet and you connect, and it's just so cool to do that. So I think showing up with help and then showing up consistently is really the key.
We got a question from Michelle. What if I'm not local, but live mainly in the Northeast?
Yeah, I would ask with a couple questions, like if there's some key areas. So I know like when you start talking about like a geographical region, especially like loan officers, some of them are licensed in, 10, 20 or, 48 states, what have you. How do you trigger that? I would play around with your strategy. Like for some, I go back to what Dave Savage always says is be like your local digital mayor. So own your zip code wherever you're at in your small area. I would try to, make sure that you're putting content out for that. And then if your strategy is to go even beyond that into bordering states or region, as you're writing content, maybe write a piece specifically for, 10 reasons, 10 whatever. Again, that's a bad example, but I'm trying to think on the fly here. About, getting a loan in the Northeast, or are there certain things that are specific to your area that might not apply to other people? So using those keywords, because, when somebody goes to ChatGPT or YouTube or Google and they're searching for a question, like, is there something unique about your region that they might be like local home buyers in that area might be asking that they wouldn't be in other areas?
And just throwing out like an example too of how you can kind of do that broader like Northeast conversation. We talked about citing sources and data and stuff. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head, just thought about property taxes. Property taxes vary so much in the Northeast, right? There's some states that are way higher than others. And so you have a blog post on that, and then you're talking about all the areas you cover, but you're bringing it back to something very specific that people could be searching for.
Insurance, property taxes, maybe you start talking about schools, or if there's like local legislation, things, anything, going back to like, when I always get asked, what do I talk about? And I always, flip the question and be like, what conversations have you had this week? Right. So if you're having client conversations that maybe are outside of a different state that you're primarily in, key in on what are some of the questions that they're asking you, and then be like, oh, maybe that actually is worth a post. I think we also overlook and overanalyze the what to talk about, simply because we ourselves get bored because we hear ourselves talking about it all day long. But I always try to remind our audience, hey, your audience isn't having that conversation every day. They're not having the conversations about 1031 exchanges or property taxes in a different state, but they're genuinely curious and asking. So show up, have the conversation based off of the questions that you're getting in those conversations.
And if you do find yourself running out of content too, Reddit is great. I mean, you see the people asking these questions, just, answer those questions. I mean, also on Reddit, but also write a larger blog post in detail on questions you see frequently asked on Reddit, and put those on a blog post, and then post it to your Google business profile as well.
Another great way that you can increase your engagement and conversations on platforms like LinkedIn is go to LinkedIn and say, hey, you guys, I would love to know, have you had this issue, or do you see this, right? So now you're putting a question out to your audience that they may not be your end viewer, but now you can put that out to your fellow colleagues and your peers asking that question. That's going to elicit a conversation or a huddle around that topic. Then you can also self-source, hey, this is other angles, and then now you can create content that you're now sharing with your clients as well. So you kind of get 2 hits out of that.
One of the, I just put in the chats, Diana on our team, who's here on the call, she put together just a playbook for GEO and LLM as it relates to loan officers and lenders. Diana, I'll let you just speak real quick about, I think it's, people have control of their own websites, might make it a little bit easier, but that's not the end all be all. So maybe you could touch on that just for a minute.
No, I mean, website is a very important aspect, and any marketing people who work for mortgage lenders watching this, it's something, you can certainly read about and see how you can adapt to your loan office pages. But I also put in there the importance of Instagram and LinkedIn, a lot of stuff we have covered today, and as well as the Google business profile, how to actually get that set up and what you can post to it. But then after going through, different aspects, there's also a 90-day marketing plan just to get you up and running, get you in the habit of creating content for these different areas to post. And don't think you have to create unique content all the time. This is where places like ChatGPT and Claude are very helpful. If you've got so you're on Reddit, you get a concept, or just even from clients you're talking to, you can put it into Perplexity, and that will help you kind of provide more detail, and that you can then transfer over into either Claude or ChatGPT, and to write more of a detailed blog post. And then you can put that on your site, and then you can then get that sort of summarized down, if it's a longer post, into say 300 words, put that into your Google business profile. So you can knock all of this out and a whole lot of content like this in pretty much like 15-20 minutes. So it's not going to take you long. Writing a blog post used to take a couple of hours with all the research and everything to do. Now you can just, do it, and do it very quickly, and then get back to working with home buyers and homeowners.
Yeah, and I put another link in for just Diana was talking about AI and just making your life easier. So we built some AI toolkits. We've also pulled in some of our partners. So like our partners at First Home IQ, the link I put in the chat has that on there. So some of the stuff you'll see at the top is also how you can use our product to get out and all the things we've talked about. So, things like, hey, what's the best way to get ready for home ownership? And if you're talking about the app and stuff, that's where stuff you can show up. We put Katie's website earlier. But that's if you don't know how to use AI or like to start to train it. One of the point anyone can use. You don't have to be a FinLocker client to use it, but there are some geared channels that we get set up to. What are you trying to do? And it starts prompting you that way. So it's an easier way to get your feet wet and see how you can actually kind of train the AIs. And these AIs are already built for certain functions. So feel free to use that.
Well, I just want to give you guys a plug too, because I know we've done a lot of partnership with First Home IQ and FinLocker. And you guys, yeah, the custom GPT that you guys built has been so good and it performs really well. So I would just echo what you're saying. Make sure that you guys swipe that and be using that. It's a huge tool that they provide. And then the other thing that I would piggyback off of what Diana said is LLMs love content clusters. And that's really what she's talking about is like if you're writing a blog post. So, when I approach my content strategy for the week, I always try to start with a core idea. What is the one core idea that I really want to share with my audience this week? How do I want to teach them? So then I take that core idea and then I call it content confetti. I just make lots of little pieces of content around a core idea. So my core piece is my blog post, and that will live on I have a personal blog, but I will have one on my LinkedIn newsletter. And then I will create smaller pieces of content and conversations around that. So I'll do a LinkedIn post, or I'll do a YouTube video, or a podcast episode. So again, not that you guys need to follow that same, formula and have all of these pieces of content. But like Diana was saying, in 15 or 20 minutes, if you have one really good idea, you can easily create a long LinkedIn post, a conversation in a couple pieces without, derailing your whole day or having to hire a really expensive agency to do it.
Some of with mentioning just First Home IQ, the reports that First Home IQ produces are awesome for content creation, for education, for everything. And so as it relates to this, I'm reading one stat right now. In January of this year, First Home IQ did a study, the next gen buyer, so Gen Z and millennials, that's who qualifies as next gen buyer. 31 or 35% were using ChatGPT to search their home buying questions.
Yep.
That number, as of August, has almost doubled to 61%. Yep. So people are going there. The stats are proving it. Now we're going to talk about one big boy on the thing. So everyone follows what certain companies are doing. The Rockets of the world, the Zillows, the Redfins, right? Well, Zillow, if you guys haven't heard, has integrated into ChatGPT. So now if you go start searching for stuff about a particular home, hey, I'm looking for a home in this area, it will pop up Zillow information, which I know a lot of us don't want to be sending our clients to Zillow. And by the way, there's ways you can prompt that to turn that off. But the point is that they're always seeing the future, right? And so they're leaning heavily into this, and the data is proving this, and it's just continuing to evolve.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, the point I would just echo, and I know we talked about this before we went live, is, a lot of times people can get annoyed or afraid of, the big Zillow and the Rocket takeover. They're going to do what they're going to do. But I think that should just give us more of a fire and a conviction to be owning the conversations, to be showing up, to be consistent. Because if we don't own the conversations, the Zillows and the Rockets will. So we at least need to be showing up and doing that. And again, this should just be a big wake-up call for all of us that we need to be, staying with and ahead of the trends. So this conversation is so important because when Zillow is showing up, in AI and things, like we want our names to also be showing up in, in those kinds of searches.
I know we're getting up to time, so I'm putting out here Katie's going to be doing in a week or two another free webinar around this. So I put that link in there. I love talking this stuff, so I'll put my email in here. If anyone wants to chat about it, we can. But we just wanted to come on here and educate what we know so far. And we're like everyone now, it's an evolving thing every day. So just continually learning. And it's really not that hard. If folks like myself can figure it out, I think others can as well.
Yeah.
It's very early days. So,
I joke.
Certainly
It feels like
believe
the wild. It feels like the Wild West. Like we're all figuring out. I mean, anytime it's like they're an AI expert, I'm like, well, I loosely hold that. I think we're all trying to stay ahead of the curve and learn. I like to say, to anybody, I would just encourage you, take 10 minutes a day, or take at least 10 minutes. Add AI learning into your tool belt of everything else that you're learning. It doesn't have to be your all-in obsession. You can leave that to other people like us on the call that are doing more of that. But just be a student, be curious. And again, it's actually way easier to use. So just be curious and have fun with it.
All right. Well, we got to do one last plug, just because this will be the last time that Brian was the FinLocker employee on one of these webinars. We'll be talking. He'll be guest appearance and still part of the FinLocker family. But wanted to say thank you for everything, Brian. It's been an amazing journey with you.
Yeah, right on. I am looking forward to following FinLocker, but most importantly, following all of the loan officers that are partnering with FinLocker and First Time IQ. And yeah, for sure, I'll be back on one of these, I'm sure, at some point. And just as I had hoped, I got a page of notes from the three of you guys. So thank you all for sharing your expertise on this really important topic. And there's so much more to come.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone's time. And there'll be a recording on this sent out. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Katie and Diana.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.